Good morning, guys. Anna Brooks here. Welcome to today's episode of Anna's Attitude Adjusters. So it's Anna Brooks here. This is episode 9. We're nearly at 10 episodes of this series, so that's pretty exciting. I think once we hit 10, I might change it up and have another series as well going. So if you're new to this, if you haven't watched any other episodes of Anna's Attitude Adjusters, basically what these centre on, they're on a variety of topics, right? But what they kind of centre around is the idea of looking at things differently, right? So it's to do with perception, it's to do with changing not so much the situation, whatever it is, but changing how you view it and changing how you see it. And therefore, by changing the focus of what you're actually concentrating on, you pretty much change the situation because you change the meaning that it has to you, right? So all of the Attitude Adjuster episodes have been about looking at things in a different way, especially situations that you'd normally maybe would be annoyed at or maybe get frustrated at or whatever it is, right? So today's episode 9, I'm going to be talking about food allergies. And this is something that I know affects so many people. It's a huge thing, right? It's, as you know, it's now very prevalent, I guess, and whatever. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty on my beliefs or anyone's beliefs about whether they're all real and whether they're in people's heads and whether, if it's really a thing, if like gluten intolerance really a thing and whatever. That's, not what this is about at all. What I actually want to talk about is, let's just assume for a second that they are all real, right? And that people are, gluten intolerant and dairy intolerant or lactose intolerant or whatever it happens to be, or really just even like, I'm going to stick with the allergies and the actual, allergies now rather than just the preferences, right? And the reason that I'm so grateful for these allergies is because it might be more than a decade ago, right? The way that the food industry was run and the way that the access that we had to different types of foods, the way that restaurants run, that kind of thing, it was very different to what it is now, right? You would go into a restaurant, and I know this is something that for a lot of people, it just annoys them that they go into a restaurant and there's like 5 different types of milks to choose from and like 3 different breads and all this other stuff, right? For a lot of people that annoys them, but this is just a perception thing, right? Because back then, when I was still, I've been very much obsessed with health and fitness most of my life, right? And especially about health and especially about looking after myself and encouraging others to look after their health. And so for me, it was a very difficult time to go out to restaurants and that kind of thing because, first of all, it wasn't big on actually providing you with the nutritional information. It was very hard to get unless you went to like places like McDonald's or something disgusting. You didn't really have the opportunity to have access to the nutritional information, right? So that made it really, really hard. And not only that, but you actually had a situation where you couldn't really even find out how it was cooked. You couldn't choose it. If you went out somewhere, it was just, basically if you got eggs, it was just scrambled or it was whatever. You didn't get a choice to basically say, well, no, I want mine scrambled, but without any cream or without any milk or anything like that, right? It was very much just stock standard and everything was cooked based on just taste, or really the chef's taste, I guess. And this was really frustrating, honestly, for me, because I would go out and I'd want to cook things like I would at home or similar, but obviously with the expertise of the chef, and it wasn't possible, right? So this made it really, really frustrating. And I know a lot of people in my similar situation who are in the health and fitness industry or just very interested in their own health and fitness had this same issue, right? So when I think for me, from what I noticed, it kind of started with gluten became kind of the big thing, that a lot of more information started coming out about celiac disease and gluten intolerance and that kind of thing. And then it's kind of started with the lactose and, nut allergies and whatever else. God, there's like everything. I can't even think of them right now. But when all of that started becoming a lot more prevalent, and therefore a lot more restaurants had to start accommodating to it and have to change their menus a little bit, or just allow that, well, yeah, if someone has, gluten and dairy intolerance, then they have to have something on the menu for that or whatever it is. This started a whirlwind, or started a avalanche in some ways, because it happened very quickly. I don't know if you noticed, but it happened very quickly, that it was almost an avalanche of change, where suddenly it wasn't even like, first it started with just menu changes and things and going, okay, here's like your one item that's that's gluten free, or here's your one item that's dairy free, or whatever. And I have friends who are have celiac disease, or have lactose intolerance or something like that, and that time sucked for them, honestly. Like, I mean, it sucked before, but it really sucked for them at that time, because they would go to a restaurant and they would literally have an option of like one menu item that the chef had decided that's going to be the gluten-free menu item, or whatever it is, right? And that kind of sucked, honestly, for them. But in starting this, it started the change that gradually, not only was it just the one item or maybe two items or three items on the menu, it started to become that most things could be changed, right? And this is what I'm getting at. So finally, I'm at the point, if you've just skipped forward and this is what you're watching, here comes the point. Because of these food allergies, and because of the people power, basically, and the masses having these intolerances and having these allergies and wanting change, and therefore paying with their dollars to create change. Because of this, people like me who have no intolerances and now, but are very health and fitness conscious, are now in a position where it's so easy to ask for what we want, right? It's so easy to go to a restaurant and you just look at the menu and you're like, oh yeah, but I want it like this, and I want it like that, and I want this, and I don't want that, and whatever it is. It changed the entire way that things are run, because suddenly we had to accommodate more people, right? And so this is something that, for most people, they get annoyed at their allergies, or, they learn to live with it or whatever, but they're not ever often in a state of actually grateful for it. So if you have an allergy, if you have an intolerance to a particular food, or a food or a part of a food or something like that, try this on for size. Try for the next, say, 7 days. Every time that you get to eat a food and you have to change something about it to make it gluten-free or make it lactose-free or whatever it is, practice being grateful for it. So before you actually sit down to the meal, you say, thank you for the opportunity to eat this food that I really enjoy in a way that I can have it and process it well, right? Give that a go, and before every single meal that you have had to, consciously think, oh, well, even if you're really, really used to it, but you're aware that, okay, yeah, I've just chosen gluten-free bread, or I've just chosen lactose-free milk, or whatever it is. Practice being grateful before that meal. And you're going to find that, within a few days, but definitely within 7 days, you're going to become so much more grateful for the opportunity to have all of this food, and it's going to actually change the way that this food interacts with your body as well, and actually make it more nourishing and more nutritional for you, because our body listens to how we feed it, and it listens to our mind and the way that we process it. If you're constantly eating this food and feeling ripped off and feeling annoyed that I can't eat all the food that my friends eat, I can't eat this, why is it so fucking annoying for me? If that's how you're feeling, your food isn't going to be processed well, because you're basically telling your body, I don't like this, I really don't like this, and therefore you're not allowed to like it either. So give that a go. And if you're in a position like me where you're not intolerant or anything, or not really, where you just kind of sometimes, if you overeat too much, like for me, if I have way too much dairy, that reacts badly with me, whereas some people are fine. But for the most part, I don't really have any issues. And so if you're like me and you don't, and you're in that position, same thing when you go to eat anywhere now, and especially if you make any change to the menu, if you select your food and you decide, oh yeah, I want this or I want that, practice the same thing. Practice that gratitude before you start the meal, and say to yourself, or say to the meal, thank you for being exactly how I want you. Thank you for being able to choose exactly what I want to eat. And especially, if you're like me, I'm in Australia, we live in a first world country, and we have access to so much food. We have access to so many choices, and we can always choose what we want. And this is a huge thing. And the fact that you can now go to a restaurant and decide that I want this, but I want to change it to this, and I want to change it to that, I believe in a big way is in thanks to our friends with allergies, because they actually changed the course of it all, right? So because of that, the expectations of the masses changed, and therefore the food industry and the restaurant industry and everyone had to change along with it. So give that a go. All right, that's my tip, is the gratefulness, right? So be grateful for what you have. This is a perception change, remember, attitude adjusters. So rather than, if you have allergies, rather than feeling hard done by, practice being grateful for all the options that you do now have that weren't there before. Before, if you were, gluten intolerant, well, you were basically stuck doing Atkins because you just couldn't eat any carbs. Now you go to any health food shop, you even go to Coles, and there's a whole aisle almost of gluten-free, options of bread and cookies and everything, right? So the more you actually get into that state of gratefulness, the better this food is actually going to be processed by you, and the more you're going to enjoy it. Being grateful for something naturally makes you enjoy it more, because how can you not enjoy it if you're grateful for it, right? So give that a go. And again, if you don't have any allergies like myself, same thing. Be grateful for the fact that you have all these options now. Before, when you couldn't choose because nobody was allergic to anything apparently, and you just had to go to a restaurant and put up with what you wanted, what was on there, you can now go and you can order and you can make changes because of all of these changes, right? So same thing, practice that gratefulness of having more opportunities, more options in your life, because that's what we all love. We love that freedom of choice, and this has given you a lot of that. So I hope that this has helped with your perception of this, food and allergies and all that kind of thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any comments, anything that you want to add, whether you agree, disagree, or even just something else that you want to pop in, please pop a comment below, whether you're watching it live or whether you're going to watch the replay. Feel free to pop a comment in. I'd love to hear from you. And that's it. I think we're going to leave it there. So remember to have an amazing day. Be grateful. Practice that gratefulness. And remember to live life on purpose. Bye.